All right, bonjour, salut, hi everybody. Today is a very exciting day for you. Why? Because you are about to learn about the 3 last irregular verbs that you need to know for grade 8. Exciting times. So as you can see here, I have my little title for these section of notes. The 3 irregular verbs that we're going to be learning today are vouloir, pouvoir, and devoir. In this video, you're going to find out how these verbs are pronounced, how they're conjugated, what they actually mean, and I'll also give you a little bit of information about a special rule that we call the verb 1, verb 2 rule that you'll find comes into play a lot when you're using these 3 verbs. So whether you are taking your notes on a piece of paper or if you're typing alongside the video as it's playing, get ready to take a little bit of notes, however is best suited for you. And while you're at it, you might want to bring out your verb chart as well if you still have that handy. If not, I'll post it on MyBlueprint so that you can get a copy of it, maybe print it off and start filling in the chart. But without further ado, let's get started with learning these 3 verbs. All right, so the first verb we're going to tackle is vouloir. Now, plain and simple, the verb vouloir means to want something, to want to do something, to want to go somewhere. It's a pretty flexible verb that's used very frequently. So the conjugations, as you can see here, are on the chart. So let's go through them just so that you know how they're pronounced. If I wanted to say that I want something, I would say je veux, V-E-U-X. If you want something, we would say tu veux, V-E-U-X, spelled the exact same way. And then if he, she, or it wants something, we would use veut, V-E-U-T. Little side note, these 3, V-E-U-X, V-E-U-X, and V-E-U-T, even though there's some slight difference in the spelling, they're actually pronounced the exact same way, just veut. Okay? Next one, if we want something, it would be nous voulons. If you, plural, wanted something, it would be vous voulez. And if a group of guys or a group of girls wanted something, it would be ils ou elles veulent. V-E-U-L-E-N-T. Okay, so we can see once again the O-N-S, E-Z, and E-N-T for a nous, vous, and il, elle au pluriel. Those guys, as we've talked about before with other irregular verbs, we tend to see those endings with those specific subjects, okay? So that pattern is still followed with vouloir. I have 2 examples here for vouloir if you'd like to copy them down just so that you have some examples to base your own sentences off of. The sentence here, I've got je veux un chat. I want a cat. Okay. Example down here, ils veulent jouer. They want to play. Okay, so as you can see here, vouloir has been conjugated with whatever subject is in the sentence. The verb changes entirely. Remember, these are irregular verbs, so I'm not just taking off the ending of the verb and adding on this guy here to the ending. No, vouloir, its form changes entirely. That's why it's an irregular verb. Okay, so there's vouloir. Make sure you've got that copied down either in your notes or on your verb chart. And let's move on to our next irregular verb. And that irregular verb is pouvoir. Now, pouvoir can mean to be able to or can. Okay, so once again, the conjugations, I've got je peux, P-E-U-X, tu peux, P-E-U-X, and il, elle, en, you guessed it, peut, but spelled P-E-U-T. Once again, these guys pronounce the exact same way, even though there's some slight difference in the spelling. Down here, we've got nous pouvons, vous pouvez, and ils, elles peuvent. This guy here, pouvoir, its conjugations are pretty similar to vouloir as we went through above, okay? Down here, my examples, tu peux lire. You can read. Vous pouvez danser. You can dance. So once again, pouvoir has been conjugated and changed shape entirely to match up with the subject. And both these sentences actually incorporate our verb 1, verb 2 rule, which I'll get into a little bit more detail after we tackle our next irregular verb. So just make sure you've got these guys copied down. They all mean to be able to or can. And let's move on to our last irregular verb. Here it is, devoir. Now, devoir means to have to do something, or to have to, or it means must. So there's a lot of force behind this particular verb, okay? So if my subject is je, devoir will change and conjugate into doit. Tu dois. Il, elle, on doit. So these three, once again, even though there's slight spelling changes, or differences rather, they're pronounced the exact same way. And they're not pronounced dois or doit. Imagine that they're pronounced or spelt like D-W-A, doit, okay? And then down here, I've got nous devons, vous devez, and ils, elles doivent. Okay, so all of these conjugations, they all mean to have to or must, okay? My two examples that I have down here. Nous devons faire les devoirs, so we must do the work or do the homework. And il doit dormir, he must sleep. Okay, so just some examples as to how devoir can be used in different sentences. So provided you have these three verbs down, either in your notes or on your verb chart, you should be pretty good on these concepts. We've been studying irregular verbs for the past little while. You don't necessarily have to have these guys completely memorized quite yet, obviously since we're just learning them today, but make sure that you know how to access these verb charts. So the last thing that I wanted to just bring your attention to is called the verb 1, verb 2 rule. Okay, what the heck is going on with the page here? Hold on, there we go. Okay, so these particular irregular verbs, vouloir, pouvoir, and devoir, they're oftentimes used in combination with other verbs in sentences. Okay, now in French, we have something that's called the verb 1, verb 2 rule. And just like it states here in the little thought bubble, this is essentially the definition of the verb 1, verb 2 rule. So when you have two verbs that are right next to each other in a sentence in French, the first verb is conjugated and the second verb stays in its infinitive form. An infinitive form just means it's unconjugated. Okay, so I have two examples here that sort of showcase this rule in action for you using some of our new irregular verbs that we just learned. So the first example, je veux voyager, means I want to travel. I've got two verbs here. This, as we know, is vouloir, conjugated with je, so that guy's going to be conjugated. And here, voyager, that means to travel. Because I have these two verbs right next to each other, I'm not going to conjugate both of them with je, just our first verb here is. And then voyager, as you can see, I've left that ER on there. I've done nothing with it. I haven't touched it. I've just rewritten it. The next one down here, nous pouvons lire. We can read. Once again, to be able to do something, or can, that is pouvoir. And then lire, which means to read, that's my second verb that I'm using. And if I'm following the verb 1, verb 2 rule, I'm making sure that this sentence is grammatically accurate. I have my verb 1 conjugated with nous, so that's why it's pouvons. And then lire, that's just left in its infinitive form. It's an RE verb, as you can see here. I've done nothing with it. I haven't touched it. Okay? So like I said, these verbs, vouloir, pouvoir, and devoir, are oftentimes used in combination with other verbs. So just be on the lookout for if you have any sentences that you're writing or that you're reading for that second verb so that you know to implement the verb 1, verb 2 rule. Okay, so here I have my verb chart, and if you've been following along throughout the year and filling it in regularly as we've been learning new verbs, yours should look pretty similar to what I have on the screen right now. We have our subjects, all filled out here. I have my regular verbs, my ER, IR, and RE verb charts all written in. And then down here for our irregulars, we've learned up into boire. So we know how to say to be, to have, to go, to make, or to do, and to drink. And we just learned how to say to want something, to be able to do something, and to have to do something. So we're going to fill this verb chart section in here right now together just to get a little bit more practice with these new conjugations, okay? Now, if you don't have the rest of this verb chart filled out, if you want to pause the video right now and fill those in, go for it. It's not too late to get caught up, okay? But let's get started on these last three verbs just to get those guys all filled in. So if I say that I want to do something, so we're focusing on vouloir right here, it's going to become V-E-U-X. If I wanted to say that you want something, once again, V-E-U-X. It would be V-E-U-T for il, elle, and on. Vouloir would become voulant for nous. It would become voulez for vous. And then it would become veulent, V-E-U-L-E-N-T for il, elle au pluriel. So there's vouloir. Next one, pouvoir. If I wanted to say that I can do something, it would become peut, P-E-U-X. For to, it would become peut, same thing as je, P-E-U-X. Il, elle, and on would become P-E-U-T. Nous, pouvoir becomes pouvons. For vous, pouvoir becomes pouvez. And then finally for il, elle au pluriel, pouvoir becomes peuvent, P-E-U-V-E-N-T. Just another little reminder here, this E-N-T on the end, you don't pronounce it, okay? And then the last irregular verb that we have is devoir, to have to do something or must. If I'm saying that I must eat the entire chocolate cake in my fridge, it would become dois, D-O-I-S. If I'm talking about something that you have to do, it would also become dois, D-O-I-S. Il, elle, on, devoir would become doit, D-O-I-T. For nous, devoir would become devant. For vous, devoir would become devez. And then finally, il and elle au pluriel. So if I'm saying that a group of people has to do something, it would become doivent, D-O-I-V-E-N-T. And there you have it, your completed verb chart. It's all filled out. You can bask in the completionness for as long as you want to. But I do have a couple activities that I would like you to complete regarding these three new irregular verbs that we just learned. But before we get on to that, I just want to remind you that this verb chart that you have right here is super important. So please make sure that you have it completed and filled out, or make your own verb chart if you want to make a different layout or something. You will need to know these verbs going forward, especially if you're planning on continuing with French in French 9, French 10, and so on. So just make sure that you hold on to this. I have students all the time telling me that they use their verb chart all the time. They keep it in their binder and they use it for all their activities in my other French 9 classes. So don't lose this, okay? Okay, so the activities that go along with vouloir, pouvoir, and devoir can be found, oh hey, there's me making my videos, on the THSS languages website. So if you don't have your learning guide copy at home with you, you can go to the Blogspot website. The link is right up here. And all of the learning guides for French 8 and other language classes can be found on this website, and you can easily download them. So the package that we're looking at right now is your Learning Guide 11 to 16 package. If you click on that guy there, it will open up. This should look relatively familiar to you. And the page that we're going to be completing today to practice with vouloir, pouvoir, and devoir can be found on page 12. So if you look here, this is page 11. There's a reading activity here. And then you'll be using the information from that reading activity to complete the questions on page 12. So we're just doing section A. There is another section on the back of page 12. You can do that if you'd like, but I'm not necessarily going to be checking that, okay? So what you're going to do is have a read through this particular reading activity, just like it says here. Pierre and Pauline are planning their dream vacations. Read what they have to say about their trips and then have a look at the information on their tickets. After, respond to the following questions in French. So here we have Pierre talking about his trip that he wants to take, and Pauline talking about her trip. As you can see, if you're just briefly scanning through the different readings, you can see a lot of vouloir, pouvoir, and devoir in there, so we're definitely going to be using those verbs in this activity. We have their tickets here as well. Here's Pierre's flight ticket, and here's Pauline's flight ticket. So all of the information that you need is right here. Okay, on page 11. Then on page 12, if you scroll or flip to page 12, there are 5 questions that you need to respond to in French in a complete sentence. Okay, so let's go through these questions just to make sure we know what they're asking. Number 1, où est-ce que Pierre veut aller? So here we're talking about Pierre. Veut, as we know now, means to want something. It's a conjugation of vouloir. Aller means to go. And if you remember our question words from way back when, où means where. So this whole question is asking, where does Pierre want to go? So obviously to answer that, you'll read through Pierre's little reading and then respond in a complete sentence saying, Pierre wants to go wherever, wherever, wherever. Okay? Question 2. We've got qu'est-ce que Pierre peut voir dans sa destination? So what can Pierre see in his destination? Okay, once again, we're incorporating pouvoir for here. So you'll respond to this question by saying Pierre can see, and then whatever he says in his reading that he's able to see on his trip. Number 3, qu'est-ce que Pierre peut boire et manger pendant son voyage? What can Pierre drink and eat during his trip? Okay, once again, Pierre can eat this and drink this during his trip. For number 4, here we're switching gears and talking about Pauline and her trip. Où est-ce que Pauline doit aller? So where must Pauline go? And then number 5, qui veut aller avec Pauline? Qui is another question word that we learned earlier on in the year. It means who. So who wants to go with Pauline? So who wants to go on this trip with Pauline, whether they're actually allowed to go or not? Okay, so once again, all I'm looking for this activity is for you to answer these 5 questions about Pierre and Pauline's trips in complete sentences. I will be looking that you're incorporating the vouloir, pouvoir, and devoir verbs properly conjugated. And other than that, if you have any questions about this activity, don't hesitate to email me or send me a message on MyBlueprint. I'm always available and willing to help. Okay, so once you're finished this, post it to MyBlueprint and we'll be good to go. Goodbye. Au revoir.